family is from East Africa. My whole name is actually Philip Otega Okongogwoke Chandaware Owuya Odoma Twahitala Morwa Sule. Most people call me Phil. All of us have had a conversation with either someone younger or older than yourself, and it feels like you're speaking a different language. The oldest millennials are turning 39. Think about that. If you think that you can continue to use the old tricks to achieve the same results, I'm telling you, you are fooling yourself. And of all the conversations that I've had with young professionals, I've yet to meet the person that says to me, Phil, when I wake up in the morning, I ask myself, who can I disrespect today?
So without further ado, please help me welcome Phil Gwoke.
The topic of generations impacts every aspect of business. It's relevant to every member in an audience, from the boomer who's been in their industry for over 30 years to the Gen Edger who's in their first week on the job. We help all the generations get a better understanding of who they're working with, who they're talking to, who their customer is, who their new employees are, and give them ideas on how they can all work better together. Every one of us at one point or another have had a conversation with someone who's either older or younger than yourself, and before long it feels like you're speaking an entirely different language. And what I want to do today is give you some ideas to speak the language of the next generation of your employees so that you can build those bridges and build a strong, cohesive team. I have a love of history. I've always been curious about what's gone on in the past. And with this topic in particular, I get to now connect those moments in history with how it's shaped different generations over time and tell it in a way that the story comes to life for them. What we're talking about really are the events and conditions that shape us during our formative years. If you're a boomer and I were to bring up the subject of NASA, and I were to say, during your teen years, what was probably the most significant moment or memory that you have about NASA?
Landing on the moon.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. If I bring up the subject of NASA to my Gen Xers, and I say, think back to your formative years, what's the most important memory that you think of with NASA? Challenger explosion. So here you got the same institution, right? The same organization, NASA. And you talk to one generation about it, sense of pride, euphoria, excitement. You talk to another generation about it, and the most outstanding memory is very dismal. I love to tell a great story, and I love to see an audience relate to the content, the information, and get them laughing. I see people laughing from the CEO of a company right down to the intern who's only been there for a few days. Sometimes we get locked into certain mindsets. I'll give you an example of what I mean. An 8-year-old kid came to his dad and said, Dad, how come the icon for my movie app is a picture of a bunk bed? He has no reference point for film. Audiences not only have a fun time, but they also have those important aha moments. This isn't another boring keynote presentation. This is an interactive conversation where we're using things like commercials, pop culture, music trivia. We create opportunities for there to be discussion in the room so that we get people out of their seats and really into the generational discussion. When you started your careers and you got to the office and the boss looked at you and said, jump, what was the right answer? How high? Exactly. Fast forward to today, young professionals come to the office, the boss says, jump, what might you hear? Why? Why should I jump? Let me see you jump. Generational shifts created a different focus. And when I talked to different focus groups, people my age in India, they sounded very similar to baby boomers here in the United States. So I expected that when I talked to millennials, they were going to sound like Gen Xers, and that wasn't the case. The millennials in India sounded just like the millennials here in America. Why? Because we have these new technologies that are creating a common mindset around the globe. So when you look in past generations around the world, you might see very strong nuances, but future generations, we're going to see probably more similarities. The customization process is an important part of everything we do. I've had the opportunity to speak to literally hundreds of clients, and what I've come to realize is no two companies or organizations are exactly alike. And so how could I ever deliver the same presentation and be effective? I've got to design it around them.
75% of millennials would take a pay cut to work for a socially responsible company. If you really want to get to the chase of things, then you start with your why and you work your way out. Start with your why. I can't say this for every industry we work with, but I know for a fact that you guys make a difference. But unfortunately, the world just doesn't understand it because it's not celebrated, it's not promoted. Figure out your why and promote it.
As a speaker and a student of other speakers, one of the things that pains me is when I get great information but aren't giving any tools on what to do with it. So throughout our sessions and at the end of every presentation, we're going to make sure our audience members walk away with actionable tips and tools that they can use the very next day. When you tell somebody what, you need to EQ it with a valuable why and a detailed how, okay? You have to provide a digital trail for them to follow. Just saying it is no longer enough. They're going to need something else to remember the content that you shared. Friends, there it is in a nutshell. And with the remaining time, I'm going to try to convince you as to why these tools are so important. One of the things that our audience members love about our presentations is we keep it positive. They'll tell me that they feel good about their generation and good about the generations that they're working with. You can bring the power of these young professionals to today's world and leverage it to a future that definitely needs your work. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Let's give a warm chamber welcome, Kelly.
I can almost guarantee you've experienced frustration when dealing with someone from a generation other than your own.
Sometimes there's this very large disconnect between those generations when in fact we're all trying to just do our thing, be successful, build each other up, but because of those generation gaps, we're missing the mark.
What I love about BridgeWorks is that we not only address these generational clash points in our keynote presentations, but we provide actionable strategies for successfully navigating them. Being a millennial myself, I can speak to some of those stereotypes that I've encountered when working with older generations. We've been viewed as entitled job hoppers, and until you unpack our formative experiences, that might seem on point. However, when you realize we grew up at a time of amazing technological advancements happening at an unprecedented pace, it starts to make more sense.
Another thing about millennials is they not only want advancements in job positions and technical skills, but they're more adamant about being developed as a full person. 71% of millennials who plan on leaving their employer in the next 2 years are doing so because they're unhappy with how their leadership skills are being developed. So when millennials are coming to you and they're saying, yes, I want to be a part of this company, they want to be developed not only from the technical side, but from the personal side as well.
We're now at a time in history when the workforce is more generationally diverse than ever. Not only are the leaders of companies staying in their careers longer, but the newest generation to the workforce, Generation Z, is starting to flood the job market. That is why a part of the work we do is creating a back and forth dialogue between the next generation and the established ones.
I know sometimes with a younger audience, like with the new hires, this can feel like, oh, we're talking about these old people, they don't understand us, we don't understand them. But that's kind of the point, is we need to create this awareness that ultimately we're all hardwired to communicate and to get together as human beings on that basic level. And the more you can understand where each generation is coming from and understand how that shows up and presents itself in day-to-day, whether it's out at the grocery store or at your first job, the more successful you're going to be.
It's important to coach Gen Z on the value of previous generations' know-how and way of doing things, because both old and new methods have their place in today's organizations.
This is understanding their reality. This is not a character flaw. This is what they know. Your generation, you have your paradigm, they have theirs. Every generation is different. Not right or wrong, not better or worse, different. And the more we can recognize and acknowledge that in other people, the smoother communication's going to be. Because not everybody wants to be treated like you want to be treated.
And this is where the insights that BridgeWorks provides come into play. We highlight how to recognize generational clash points and then take it a step further by laying out different approaches for both new and experienced professionals on how to minimize generational discord.